I'm also the host of NewAbolitionists Radio on the BlackTalkRadioNetwork.com. I am considered an expert on modern-day slavery and human trafficking happening in the United States of America. So I want to tell you about that in just a couple of minutes. First of all, the idea that slavery ever ended at any point in history is a lie.
Come on!
In 1865 and 1863, at the passing of the 13th Amendment, an exception clause was inserted by Abraham Lincoln. That exception clause says that slavery shall be abolished in the United States of America and all its territories except for prisoners duly convicted. Immediately in 1866, right here in South Carolina, the first federal prison was built to exploit that 13th Amendment exception clause and start what they called convict leasing. This convict leasing went on all the way up to 1928, when the last state to allegedly abolish it was Alabama. In 1970, Richard Nixon began what we call the war on drugs, which we all know was a war on black and brown people. That began the period that we call mass incarceration. At that time, there were only 230,000 prisoners across the entire country. 10 years later, another president, Ronald Reagan, introduced the first private prisons, which, for the first time since 1865, allowed private citizens to own people in the form of jail bonds and prison stocks. These prison companies have become humongous global entities. An example would be right now in the continent of Africa. The largest employer in the entire continent of Africa is G4S, which is a prison company. They have locations in 29 nations in Africa and employ almost 170,000 Africans who are enslaving each other. Here in South Carolina, we have a 27% African American population and a 66% white population. But in the prisons here in South Carolina, there are 5 black people in prison for every 1 white person. We find this is going on in every state in the union. And we understand why they're doing it. They're exploiting the 13th Amendment exception clause. They're working with private prisons and private industries, and they're even employing us in the prisons for 35 cents an hour. I'm sure you heard stories of prisoners who make products sold on the open market like Victoria's Secret. Well, this state, South Carolina, is where people were making Victoria's Secrets in prisons. Right here. There are nearly 1 million people employed by the prison industry for pennies on the dollar right now. Many major companies use prison industry slave labor for their products, goods, and services, like McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Starbucks, Walmart, and many, many others. To incarcerate one teenage child here in South Carolina cost $161,000 a year. I could send my entire family to college for $161,000 a year. In places like New York State, the cost of incarcerating a teenager is $353,000 a year. This is a bounty on our children's heads. This is happening all across America, and it involves human trafficking, where states like Hawaii has built a prison in Arizona that will only house Hawaiians. They are shipping people from Hawaii to Arizona to a prison that only houses Hawaiians. And the corruption is so deep that in that prison in Arizona, I believe it's called Eloy, the mayor and the deputy mayor, who were part-time mayor and deputy mayor, and negotiated the contract for these Hawaiians to be shipped from Hawaii to Arizona, was also full-time employees of the very prison system that they were negotiating with, which is CCA, the largest private prison industry in America. We're telling you right now, don't take my word for it. You can find out for yourself. Slavery never ended. Right here in South Carolina, they're practicing it. They're practicing it across the way in New York. They're practicing it across the way in Louisiana. And in places like Mississippi, the entire prison industry in the entire state has been shown to be corrupt, with the longest running commissioner, Commissioner Christopher Epps, going to prison for corruption for 366 years. He was literally buying and selling his own people through the prison system industry and working with judges and legislators to make this happen. If you don't remember anything, remember this. Slavery never ended. The abolitionists never left. And we are back, and we are global. And it is our purpose here to end modern-day slavery and human trafficking in the United States of America. Thank you, everyone.
Ashe Hotep.